Anger feels sexy in the moment, but it's like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. So then where's the work? The work is then if all of that is true, what can I actually change? And what does that work not just look like on a practical level? What does it feel like?
Mm.
You know, what we did today, we were still talking about step one, and she gave me this story. Her husband, who always drinks instant coffee, he had run out. And by the way, there's a store where he could get it. And he was like, oh, shit. Okay. Can you just fill up your coffee with a little more water? So all of a sudden, she's thinking, "Ugh, okay, well, he's not even going to like my coffee. I don't want to fucking hear it." She challenges him to go get the coffee himself. He's an adult, he's fully capable. And she's like, I'll just go get it. And he's all thankful. A few days later, she wants some ice cream from the store. She asks him to get it. He cannot be bothered. He cannot be bothered. He wanted to go out and get something else for himself at a different store. And he was insisting, I can just get you something from this other store. And she said, no, I really want it from this store. She's like, forget it. I'll just get it myself. And as he's about to leave, they can leave at the same time, by the way. They have a dog who can be left alone for 5 minutes in the house. But no, he's insistent that the dog can't be alone. So as she's getting ready to go take care of herself, but she's pissed because she was kind to him a few days earlier with the coffee. So she's pissed again. He kicks his shoe, because now he's got to stay in the house with the dog. Well, insanity. And she's so angry. And I'm going, okay, why'd you do that for him in the first place? Why'd you offer to get him the coffee? Well, because I know he loves that cup, but you know he's not going to appreciate it. And now look at you. You're waiting. You're expecting. You're assuming he's going to do something in return for you. You know, you're right. In a different scenario, in a different marriage where you have a real partner, this is sweat dripping down your back. This is nothing. These are tiny gestures, tiny acts of kindness. But that is not your reality. And you keep trying to shapeshift your reality. And that's your delusion. That's you trying to exert power over who your husband actually is, not who he is showing you to be. And you know how it makes your life unmanageable? You're filled with fucking rage, not
All the
just at
time.
him, at yourself. And
I was
it's
gonna say.
killing you. So what can you do? And so, you know where we got to today? Because we're talking about decades of these patterns. You don't just break that shit overnight when it comes to anything related to your husband. Anything. And he starts to trigger you. Your job is to pause. I don't care if you step outside, you go into your bathroom and lock the door, you walk into a different space. I don't care. You're going to put your hand on your body and you're going to say, what is the greatest act of care that I can do for myself right now?
Welcome to Inner Power Insights. And I'm so happy that you're here. And I'm a huge fan of yours. I see your videos. You're such a fun person to listen to because you have this amazing energy. And we're going to talk about how everybody thinks that you're busy, but as a person itself, I can see your energy actually shows in your personality.
I've had a big personality for my whole life, but the fact that where my passion comes from now is such a purpose driven place. It's like my passion when I was little is 10x now because of the clarity and the mission I'm on, which was not at all what I thought I would be doing with my life is so much bigger than my little story. I know in my heart and my bones, I'm going to be spending the rest of my life talking about healing at the level we're going to talk about it today. So, yes, I get lit up when I speak about it. And it's really cool that people can feel that. I also think real authenticity and transparency is missing. I think we are starving for real connection. And the irony of being in such a digitally connected world and being so soul sick is not lost on me. So the least that I can do when I go onto the internet is to speak boldly, passionately, and honestly about my lived experience, just to break through the noise and frankly the bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just so needed that. That's so amazing. Take us back. What inspired you to become this author and physical therapist? I know you've been through a lot in life, but let's
Mhm.
just to start from, you're an author and your book is Breaking the Circuit. I love the name. I love because in our head we have that, that circuit that's going on, and
Exactly.
it's like it's so much chaos. So how did you start this journey to become this person that you are right now? I'm gonna let you tell us what you've been through. I'm not gonna spoil that, but
Mm,
you've been through a lot and you come out on the other side so strong, and you wrote a book
mm.
about it. So
Yeah.
what are some challenges that you face in life?
Yeah. There's such a big way to answer that. Here's where I want to start. I'm 16 years sober from drugs and alcohol.
Yes.
When I graduated with my doctorate in physical therapy, I had 3 years sober.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really working a 12-step program, though I was going to the meetings. So spiritually, I was suffering quite a bit. Physically, I was abstaining and
Mm-hmm.
checking all the boxes culturally because now I had a fancy degree. And the guy I was with on the front end of my addiction had stayed with me and he proposed to me. And we were going to move to California and start this big life. And within a few years of working for someone else, I realized how broke I was, first of all. And I mean, we're going to get to the spiritual brokenness in a
Mm-hmm.
moment, but literally how much debt I had from school and how little DPTs, doctors of
Mm-hmm.
physical therapy, actually made. And I thought, this can't be it. There is no way that I went to school to help people so that I could be broke, number one, and number two, not really help them because the system is set up to fail, where you're treating people's symptoms and you're not treating the source. And I thought, where are all these people going when they get discharged? When insurance basically decides for them, I'm not going to pay for this anymore. You're healthy enough. And I thought, oh, they're going to personal trainers and Pilates instructors and yoga therapists, and they're paying them cash and they're paying them two, three, four times as much. I was making $33 an hour
Mm-hmm.
for 3 years straight, no raise. And by the way, the hourly amount that was in 2010, it's 2025, is maybe 40 something dollars for a DPT
Right.
today. Okay.
So sad.
So I was like, I I got to start branding myself as somebody who could provide that extension of care into functional fitness and movement pattern correction so that I could take these people from 60% to 100%. Well, it turns out you don't learn anything about running a business in PT school or branding. And people didn't even know we did that.
Mm-hmm.
PTs don't even know they can do that because they just come out into a system and they assume, like little ants marching, that they need to just
Mm-hmm.
follow suit, right? And I was the one sort of asking all the hard questions. Who made this the standard of care? This is not something I want to subscribe to. So I started my own practice And I had it for 10 years and it was amazing. I mean, treating whole body, whole person. Now, of course, I'm getting so much time with the patient. I'm getting an hour every time. That is unheard of in our healthcare system. So I'm also finding out all the things going on in their lives, not
Mm.
just the physical pain, right? The
Mm.
marital stuff, the work stuff, the children's stuff. And I'm starting to realize as I'm living this sober life and traversing really hard things sober. The first of which was a marriage that was falling apart in early sobriety. So, right when we moved to California, he starts pulling away, and spiritually, I'm just bankrupt. I am trying to control him, change his mind, make him forgive me, make him love me again. I'm going crazy. I end up moving out, sleeping on couches for months and months and months. And finally, I sign a lease and we're separated, and I'm just broken. And I started doing this deep healing work on myself because I was at true rock bottom, which is a place where you don't want to die, but you can no longer go on living the way you've been living. And I was a diehard perfectionist. I knew exactly how to control the world around me until I didn't, because perfection collapses with matters of the heart. And perfection couldn't fix my marriage or change my husband's mind. So I went crazy and I got taken to my knees and I started doing this deep healing work. And I do the, what does that mean? I do the 12 steps. I've done them already, but I didn't really enjoy them. They sounded really religious. They sounded really outdated. They felt threatening to the parts of me that were controlling everything, that were taught to do so as a young girl because it kept me safe. So the 12 steps were threatening my safety, unbeknownst to me, until I was ready to hear them in a new way. And we did the steps on my marriage. We finally get to the ninth step, which is making an amends. And for the first time ever in my life, at 30 years old, 5 years sober, this woman says, "Have you ever made an amends to yourself?" That was an act of revolution. Women are carrying tremendous amounts of guilt, regret, and shame all day long. Not only is it corroding the lens through which we see the world, because we're always seeing it through, this is what I get for what I've done, this is what I deserve. It's never going to be better than this. It's also corroding us physically because it creates a constant stress response in the body, which now
Mhm.
there's so much evidence around the hyper release of cortisol and adrenaline, the cycle of inflammation, and the way that that creates cascade of diseases,
Mhm.
autoimmune diseases, heart disease. I mean, so I'm doing all this profound work on myself. And as I'm learning the art of a more compassionate self talk, I can hear the whisper of my intuition for the first time in decades. How did I know it was my intuition? Well, I didn't know right away, but I knew it was a part of me I hadn't heard in so long. And it was a totally different part than my controlling voice and my shaming voice because it was calm, clear, curious, and compassionate. So I started having these breakthroughs, sort of clarifying emotional breakthroughs. I had breakthroughs around what to do next for my business. And all the while, I'm doing all this personal work and I'm running a clinic. And I can't help but notice the soul sickness in the patient. And that no, they were not an addict in the traditional sense, but they seemed very addicted to people pleasing, martyrdom, perfectionism, the beauty and body standard. And these addictions were making them suffer. And they were getting in the way of what they came and paid me a lot of money for, which was to fix their knee pain. Because guess what? They didn't do the program that we curated for them because they said yes when they should have said no, and they didn't get home till really, really late, and they got no sleep, and now they're exhausted and they can't emotionally regulate, let alone do their exercise program. And I'm thinking, wow, me and these people are not much different, are we? And I'm not sure these presentations are unique to the addict. In the 12 step rooms, it's very That's alcoholic thinking. That's very alcoholic of you. I don't know. I think it's human of me. Now, that's not to say that when I ingest a mind altering substance, something else happens to me and I have no idea how many I'm going to have or where it will take me and if I'll actually be alive or dead. That is a differentiating factor. But the emotional presentation, pretty similar to our human experience. How does this lead me to writing a book? Well, a lot of us want to write a book. I feel like, we've all got so many stories, rich with heartbreak and lessons if we're lucky. But what's it going to take for us to write the book? That's a huge thing, and what's going to be the moment in time where we go, now, I have to write it now. So it was always a thing in the back. One day I'll write a book. And then 3 years ago, on March 13th in 2022, I was in the Austin, Texas airport with my husband. We had just gone there, probably our first long weekend away from having babies, to look at a potential investment property, which was so exciting because we had been so broke, not just growing up as children, but broke in LA for a long time before we got our feet underneath us and started to have a little financial stability. And we almost put an offer on a house. We decide to hit the pause button and we're waiting for our flight back to LAX. And I get this incessant text message on my phone, and I'm not responding. I'm looking at the area code. I'm like, I don't know. It's spam. It's obviously spam. And then it keeps coming and then it keeps coming. And then I realize the area code is New Jersey, which is where my sister lives. And I'm like, oh my God. And I just write, and I know who's writing to me. And she said, I'm so sorry, Sam. Your sister's gone. I collapsed in the airport. I, here's what I remember. Almost nothing. I remember wailing like a dying animal. And my husband had no idea what to do. And he was like, do you want to stay here? Do you want to skip the flight? Do you just want to get on a flight right back to New Jersey? And I was like, get me on the fucking plane. Like I couldn't function. I knew I had to get home to see my babies, because then I knew the next however many days and weeks and months of my life were going to be absolute hell on earth. And I don't remember anything about the plane ride. Apparently, I turned to my husband and I said, I'm writing a fucking book. That's the day I knew that Samantha, the clinician, who was separately living a sober spiritual life, was dead too. And that wherever I was going next was going to be the integrated version of me, whether it's how I coach people one-on-one or what I speak about on a stage. Because that knowing, that presentation in my clinic of the spiritual suffering of my patients had to be at the front and center of everything I did. Everything good in my life, every financial success, the reconciliation of my marriage, by the way, because it's the same man today that I'm married to, the financial stability we have, the deep well of friendships, the love and the joy after heartbreak, everything I have is a direct result of how spiritually fit I am. And so people can come to me thinking they have a problem in one area, but we must address what is happening on a soul level. If not first, then at the same time.
Right. Wow. How did your addiction started it? Take me back there.
You know what's interesting? I used to say when I would share about my addiction in a 12-step meeting that my first drug of choice was control. And to some extent, that's true. But before I ever picked up a drink or a drug, what I was addicted to was codependency. Because I grew up in a house with a mother who was abusing prescription pills and who was mentally ill. And I
Mhm.
was constantly monitoring her well being.
Oh.
So, whatever I needed to say or do to make mom stop crying or stop yelling is what I was going to do. Whoever I had to become was what I was going to become. So, in a lot of ways, that coupled with the hardwired disposition toward perfectionism
Mm,
really allowed me to go out into the world and just seek external validation.
mm,
So, right. So, if I could get the A, if I could do the best on the performance, whether it was the dance performance or the gymnastics competition, if I was the favorite in the class, everything was amazing.
mm,
That made mom happy and that made me feel really, really safe. So there was a long period of time, even when I was experimenting, which seemed like a lot of fun at the time and very,
right.
very normal, right? With drugs and alcohol. It was nothing that ever got out of control. I
Mm,
was sort of doing it and then I could not do it for long periods of time. Of course, I loved the feeling it gave me, but it would take me 6 to 8 months into my first year sober before I really understood what drugs and alcohol were doing for me.
mm,
In the beginning, it was not only this is what my peers are doing, this is what my mother is doing. And my older sister that I referred to earlier,
right.
she was sneaking out. She was partying. She was trying ecstasy when ecstasy was all the rage. She was finding random drug dealers in New York City clubs. And it was totally normal that I would have a fake ID at 14, 15 years old and go to Sound Factory, which was this huge New York City nightclub, stay up all night, tell my mom I was sleeping over at a friend's house, which I was, but we were driving into the city. We were buying ecstasy off of a stranger, high as a kite, dancing for 6 hours and coming home. That was
Right.
completely normal. And then
No.
I could just go on, for
Right.
days and days and get the straight A's, and everything was completely fine. I go away to college, and the same thing is true. For a little while longer, I doubled down on I can control the world around me. Everybody watch. Everybody said you're going to gain weight in the beginning of college. You're going to get the freshman 15. You're going to do really badly in your first semester. This is just what happens. So get ready. And I'm thinking, you haven't met me yet. So what do? Yes, I drink a little, I smoke a little weed, but mostly I make sure I get home, get a good night's sleep so I can study, 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 and get the A's. And I make sure don't order Domino's late at night. You're going to actually be the girl that comes home thinner. And I do it successfully. And then I have this one professor in my sophomore year who's so hard on me. It did not matter how hard I tried. It was a communications class, this really tough writing class. We had to do all kinds of strange assignments that I had never done before. Every time, C, C, C. And I couldn't stand it. I also didn't know how to ask for help. I also didn't know how to tolerate rejection or failure at all. I only knew how to control the world around me. And now I couldn't. So I plagiarized. Had never plagiarized before or since. Hand in that work. He hands it back to me. Big zero. See me after class. I end up getting an 18-month suspension from the university. The amount of shame was so unbelievable, not just inside of me, because it was such a huge mistake with such a severe consequence. I mean, how many people do we know cheat in college? I had never cheated in my life. I worked so hard. And this is a story of my life. The spiritual lessons I am here to learn. come with something massively painful on the front end. And I like to think of it now that I'm a high soul. I'm here to, there's some big, big shit I'm here to do. But holy crap,
Holy crap. I was
do
going to
I need to
say.
be taken to my fucking knees? And so I say all that because, imagine having a mother who was so proud, right, of her daughter's physical appearances and bodies and intellects, and I'm winning all these awards because of how smart I am at this prestigious university, and then I get kicked out for plagiarizing. So it wasn't just my shame, it was my mother's shame. I'm also 19. I'm also coming out from under the house I grew up in where my dad lived in the basement and he was just in denial. And my mother was telling me all the tales of all the horrible things he had ever done. And so I had started to question my environment as a kid now that I was away in college. I had questioned why my mother told me the things that she told me.
Mm.
What are you doing telling a child about your extramarital affair? I'm not your friend. Why is dad in the basement not standing up for himself? What the fuck is happening in my house? And now I'm kicked out. She's ashamed and I'm living with her. This was the beginning of where's the alcohol? Where's the cocaine? And where is an apartment in New York City that I can move to as fast as possible? Because this is not
It's
going to
not for
happen.
me.
So it was less than a year that I lived with my mother. And then I was like, oh, I'll bartend. That's what every 20-year-old does to live in New York City. Who, by the way, wants to be a star because that's always what I wanted was to have a record deal and to sing and dance. And my mom kind of poo-pooed that and made me go to college. And this is all happening for me. So fuck you, mom. Now I'm going to go do what I've always wanted to do. And I'll support myself through bartending. This is a very dangerous combination, right? Because I have this unrelenting voice inside my head that's telling me I have to perform at the highest level or else, or
I was
else
gonna
I'm not.
say that. Yes, I was gonna say that. As I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking, you are a chameleon
Yeah,
because you, like you said, with the control and pleasing everybody, you were never yourself.
that's
So
right.
every character that you pretending to be, it was just some typical girl wanted to be successful, go work on the thing, do the drugs, to go out and all of that. But none of them was you. And like you said, I think that was very profound what you said, that you had to do whatever you had to do to make sure your mom don't cry and to make sure that she doesn't yell. To make sure that, okay, that is very little considering what you had to go through. So that part of you as a human, that compassion that you had toward your mom as a child, like obviously you were so young, didn't know. That was the only little dot that you were yourself. Everything around the layer of the onions that are wrapping you around and keeping you tighter and tighter and tighter. You know what? I don't give a fuck. That's not me. You knew subconsciously that's not me. I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing what I have to do. I can flip. I can switch. I can be somebody else. I've done that. I'm so good at that.
Yep.
You ain't gonna beat me on that shit.
Yep.
And that's what people don't understand because I talk about people pleasing a lot and I know where that come from because that's the mentality we have. You don't know who I am. I could be anybody you want me to be. And I
Mm-hmm.
could beat you in your own game. And that's the selfishness that comes in with ourselves to kind of suppress your own self of who you are. This innocent child, this beautiful girl that is so talented that the whole world is looking forward to experience, but you keep getting bombarded by these obstacles and you knocking him down by being perfectionism, like I have control. I'm good. Boom.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, you're
Yeah.
not. And
Mm-hmm.
this is the result of that, what you have become today. Such an amazing person. It took you a long time to bring this out. This.
I know.
And I'm glad you're sharing your story because people think that's normal. It's not normal. It's not normal to be that, like you said, getting A's, doing this, doing that. It
Yep.
may on the paper, on the outside, it may look good,
Yep.
but who you are right now, this is fucking priceless.
Yep.
And you had to break through that.
Yes. Yes. And this is so important, right? Because one of my earliest memories as a girl, I mean, I could not have been more than 4 or 5, was confronting my mother and saying, "Why do you have to take those pills at night?" Because it scared me when she did. Not because she was mean and screaming, but because she was pacified.
Yeah.
She was lifeless. And she would stand in the kitchen and eat more junk food in that window of time before she fell asleep than I saw her eat all day long. And I would just watch her on the landing of the stairs. When I asked her that question, she said, "Do you like the things that you have?" I'm 4 or 5. What am I going to say? I was like, "Yes." She was setting me up out of her own defense. Well, if you like the things that you have, I need to make money. And in order for me to make money, I have to work. And in order for me to work, I have to sleep. These pills help me sleep. That was the end of the conversation.
Wow.
I learned immediately to take this authentic, bright, beautiful spirit and put the fire out of her. Don't ask mom that again. In fact, when you have an instinct to ask a question because something doesn't feel right, ignore it and chase down whatever validation you need to be safe and in proximity to your caregivers. So,
Yeah.
yes, right? Which is why until I did the step work in a more compassionate way, which by the way is what my whole book became about. Yes, it's about the hardest stories of my life, but I made it prescriptive, not because I know it'll save someone else's. I hope it does,
It
but
does.
because I know what saved mine. I had been suffering from shame, not just from a marital crisis that brought me to my knees, shame from as early as I can remember that I cannot trust myself, my capital S self. I am not to be trusted. If nobody's going to meet me there, and instead of being able to trust myself from a loving place, the only voice inside my head was, "Not enough, Samantha. Not smart enough, not skinny enough, not pretty enough. You're not enough. Do it again. Try harder." If that's the voice running my life into the ground, it doesn't matter. Not only is that going to kill me, and it almost did with a cocaine overdose on the night that I got accepted into graduate school, it was killing me spiritually in my marriage because guess what? This is what you fucking get for what you did to your husband. It didn't matter that my intuition was showing up saying, "I swear to God, Samantha, he's cheating on you. This isn't adding up. You don't deserve this." It didn't matter that she was talking to me because the shame voice was so much louder. I am so impassioned by reframing these 12 steps around what we now know in 2025 about childhood trauma, psychology, and addiction, because I believe it will save more lives and at the very least save more souls from suffering. So, yes, I could not get reacquainted with my intuition until I had a vehicle to clear my shame.
It is true. It is true. And I like what you said that addiction is with the drug is very common. People see that that's a coping mechanism that a lot of people go to do that. But in reality, we all have that addictive personality, which you find out in a hard way by looking at the people because like at least I'm fucking drinking. You're not drinking and you're just crippled inside. You just cripple inside. And I'm glad you mentioned that because a lot of people think that like you said, coming from the pain of the body. It's not the pain in your body, just your. And how do you recognize that? How do you tell people that?
Uh, I spend between 90 minutes and 2 hours in the initial assessment. So I'm going to look at everything I need to look at with their actual body. And COVID was actually amazing in the sense that it taught me how much can be done virtually too.
Right.
Nothing is as powerful as in person when you're a practitioner, and especially when you can get your hands on somebody's body if they need that. But there's a lot you can do with motion analysis, capture. There's a lot of amazing apps now. So, however, it's done, there's a thorough amount of time on the body, but all the while, I'm doing an intake, if you will, on the landscape of their life,
Yeah.
right? And I'm going to find out. Forget, I'm not a psychologist, right? So I'm not going to go into childhood trauma. I'm not going to ask them those things, but I am definitely going to ask them their relationship with their job, with their significant other, if they have one, or their desire to be in a romantic relationship, the quality of their friendships, the quality of their relationship with food and body, and the quality of their self talk. I'm going to ask them, and I guarantee there will be at least one place, if not multiple, where there are pain points. And that's the beginning of starting to unpack the belief systems around
Mm.
these things. And I have a client right now. She's not an addict, and she's doing spiritual coaching with me. And we're using the 12-step framework in this modern way. Why? Well, she seemingly was living a perfectly fine life, but she has a marriage that is holding her hostage. She is a prisoner in her marriage. And what she's successfully done, really to survive, not to heal, is have a separate life outside of the marriage, not with another man, but this is
Awesome.
what I do to go have my friendships and my workouts and but as soon as she enters those four walls of her home, it's like a jail cell. And she finally got fed up of living a double life, of having to split herself in two. And she said, I need help. So, what does that look like, right? So, I get someone just to start talking. In her case, it's about her marriage. Tell me about it. And the cool thing about the steps is there's a framework, right? I'm not just
Right.
randomly going to let somebody talk and talk and talk and dump the problem and stay in the problem. We're going to start at step one, which is really, if you take a modern approach to step one, what is step one, by the way, for people listening who are like, I don't even know what that is in recovery? I'm powerless over, name the substance, let's say alcohol. I'm powerless over alcohol, and my life has become unmanageable. Okay. I have a lot of things I could say about that, but let's just move this right over to the case of the woman in the marriage. I am
Mm.
powerless over my husband.
Awesome.
That my husband is really negative, that my husband is an untreated addict, that my husband refuses to do work on himself, that up until this moment at least, that I thought staying was the best thing. Like that was the best I could do, but I'm powerless over sort of my past choices up until now. And the list can go on, right? And
Mm.
when I try to exert power over all those things I just said, so
Mm.
him, when I try to point out that what he's saying or doing isn't kind, why'd you do that?
Mm.
Different than saying, that really hurts me when you do that. And if you do that again, I'm going to leave. That's a
Mm.
boundary. But if we're pointing out someone else's behavior to get them to see how they're acting, that's us trying to exert power over something we cannot. And that makes our lives unmanageable. Now, it's not as obvious as an addict who has you have a severe alcohol or cocaine addiction. Oh, if I think I have power over that and I go and drink or I use cocaine, unmanageable might look like an overdose and a death.
Right.
Okay. So we're talking about
Yeah.
something much more insidious. You want to talk about repetitive stress in the body? This is repetitive emotional stress. So unmanageability looks like this mother, because now that you tried to make him see, even though he's a
Mm.
sick man and he can't see, but you thought maybe this time the way you said it would make him see his part. So it wouldn't be such a dick next time, but he didn't. And now you're fucking pissed, even more than you were before. And now you have resentment coursing through your veins. And now you walk around with a fucking chip on your shoulder. And now you're beating yourself up because you chose to stay. Not to mention the physical cascade, as I said earlier, of cortisol and adrenaline that is only meant to be there when we've got to run from a saber-toothed tiger or fight off an enemy. Not
Yeah.
meant to be there flooding constantly into our bloodstream, which when you are constantly angry by trying to exert power over people, places, things, and situations that you cannot change, is what's happening inside of you. You are literally making yourself sick.
Yeah.
So then the real magic happens, not just when a person like this woman that I'm coaching starts to elevate her consciousness and go, oh my God, I'm doing this so much.
Mm.
Oh my God. This has been an addict. This has been, I default to pointing shit out to him and being angry. Anger feels sexy in the moment, but it's like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die.
To die.
So then where's the work? The work is then if all of that is true, what can I actually change? And what does that work not just look like on a practical level? What does it feel like?
Mm.
You know, what we did today, we were still talking about step one, and she gave me this story of earlier in the week, her husband, who always drinks instant coffee, he had run out. And by the way, there's a store where he could get it that's the shortest walk. Okay. And he was like, oh, shit. I don't have it. Okay. Can you just fill up your coffee with a little more water? Because he was going to have some of hers. So all of a sudden, she's thinking, "Ugh, okay, well, he's not even going to like my coffee. Then he's probably going to bitch about it. I don't want to fucking hear it. And like, she challenges him to go get the coffee himself. So again, trying to make it, he's an adult. He's fully capable. Okay. He doesn't get it. And she's like, I'll just go get it. I'll get it for you. Gets it, and he's all thankful. A few days later, she wants some ice cream from the store. She asks him to get it. He cannot be bothered. He cannot be bothered. He wanted to go out and get something else for himself at a different store. And he was insisting, I can just get you something from this other store. And she said, no, I really want it from this store. She's like, forget it. I'll just get it myself. And as he's about to leave, they can leave at the same time, by the way. They have a dog who can be left alone for 5 minutes in the house. But no, he's insistent that the dog can't be alone. So as she's getting ready to go take care of herself, but she's pissed because she was kind to him a few days earlier with the coffee. So she's pissed again. He kicks his shoe. Because now he's got to stay in the house with the dog. Well, insanity. And she's so angry. And I'm going, okay. Why'd you do that for him in the first place? Why'd you offer to get him the coffee? Well, because I know he loves that cup, but you know he's not going to appreciate it. And now look at you. You're waiting. You're expecting. You're assuming he's going to do something in return for you. You know, you're right. In a different scenario, in a different marriage where you have a real partner, this is sweat dripping down your back. This is nothing. These are tiny gestures, tiny acts of kindness. But that is not your reality. And you keep trying to shapeshift your reality. And that's your delusion. That's you trying to exert power over who your husband actually is, not who he is showing you to be. And you know how it makes your life unmanageable? You're filled with fucking rage. Not
All the
just at
time.
him, at yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And
I was
it's
gonna say.
killing you. So what can you do? And so, you know where we got to today? Because we're talking about decades of these patterns. You don't just break that shit overnight.
No, no.
I said, when it comes to anything related to your husband, anything, and he starts to trigger you, your job is to pause. I don't care if you step outside, you go into your bathroom and lock the door, you walk into a different space. I don't care. You're going to put your hand on your body and you're going to say, what is the greatest act of care that I can do for myself right now? Not him.
So powerful.
She thinks that she's so detached emotionally because she's had to survive that way that she's either I'm in my happy life or I'm
Or,
in a
yeah.
fit of rage towards this man and myself. She hasn't even gotten to the underbelly, which is
Mm,
grief and sorrow for everything that's been taken and her role in that. That there's no power, there's no access to power for her right now. So, this is the beginning of her reclaiming some agency over not just the tactical things. Oh, that's right. He's a grown man. I don't have to get him the coffee because it's probably going to be tied to an expectation that if I do this for him, right? Yes, there's tactical, there's boundaries, there's yes, yes, yes. But emotionally, if you want to stop splitting yourself in half, you have to literally check in with what you need at the deepest level. What does your heart need right now? You might need to fucking cry because this shit is really sad. It is so sad that this is the state of things,
yeah.
right? So, this is one example, right, of a woman who is only doing the spiritual work with me, not the physical, and how we tackle it. So, I let somebody just give me the download. How are things going in that area that you have that pain point? Tell me about it. Tell me what's new. What happened this past week or in the last couple of days? And I'm immediately able to see the places where they've given their power away, the places
Mm,
where they're beating themselves up, the places where there needs to be an injection of forgiveness or compassion or curiosity or radical accountability. And I can speak to them from that place because I've done all the work and I have this template.
mm,
So, what I feel like I'm doing, I go out into the world and I'm wearing, a construction worker has a belt around them with all their tools. I've got this invisible spiritual tool
two.
tool belt around my waist. Literally at any time, no matter what the situation is, whether it's stuck in traffic or finding out in the Austin airport that my sister died of a drug overdose, and I can pull out any one of the fucking 12 steps, any one of them, and use them as a pathway through my pain, not just to ease the suffering, but to experience freedom from suffering, freedom from suffering, joy, real power,
Mm,
real love, real connection. The shit that when I get to the end of my life is going to let me know I fucking lived it.
mm.
That's what I'm interested in. That's what I want for people.
So if somebody is listening right now and totally relates to all of this, like we bringing up that addiction is, like I said, is one thing. That's what you're talking about right now. That's easy. From what I'm hearing, is like that addiction of alcohol, things that we have, it actually looks much easier than somebody that don't doing these drugs. And then, my God, and it's like you said, decade of those wiring and getting used to that, and then you have to unwire it and you have to reset all the stuff is harder than just to go to the rehab for a couple of things and come back. I'm good. But if somebody is listening right now and they're to that, what is the most important thing? What is the first thing they have to do to realize that they are powerless and they have to do something about it? What are some signs that they can recognize within themselves?
Mm.
Because sometimes we're so in it, when we're so in it, everybody else can see it. And you can even feel it inside of you, but you're not doing anything about it. I don't know for some reason why, because we're waiting, like you said, tomorrow, the next week, the next week. But what are
Yep.
some things that they can like know, like it's time for you to stop everything that you're doing right now, recognize where you are and need to do something about it?
Man, I wish I could fast track people to rock bottom. My experience in my own life, a lot less since I've had time sober, because I know now how long I can drag my feet through the mud in a painful pattern.
Mm,
And that when I do that, not only does it hurt like hell for longer, but it also shrinks my spiritual vessel and I don't birth anything new into the world. So I do
mm,
that less now. I have learned to not stew in the suffering for as long. But a lot of people need pain to be the circuit breaker, to wake them the
mm,
fuck up. Okay. I wish I could wave a wand and grant people the gift of desperation. I want people to be so sick of lying to themselves in the one area that they know is not okay, but they keep pretending that it is.
that it is.
I want them to be so sick of the self betrayal that they say, I will not fucking lie to myself anymore and say that this is okay when it's not.
Mm.
I'm going to tell one person that I trust, one person, I am not okay in this part of my life. I am fucking suffering. I am miserable. And I don't know what to do. We are only as sick as our secrets.
Mm.
If you want a pathway out of your pain, you need to get rigorously honest with yourself.
So when you're afraid to talk about it, that's when you know it's time to
When you're
talk about
doubling
it.
when you're doubling down on hiding something, that is shame, keeping it in the dark, and shame is a killer. I watched it
Mm.
kill my sister. I watched it almost kill me in my marital crisis.
Mm.
I watched it almost kill me in my cocaine addiction. I've seen it kill a lot of people I love. The only way you stop shame, which is a force of darkness in its tracks, is to speak out loud what you are trying to keep quiet. You
Mm.
must speak it out loud, because what you do is you inject light onto it and into it, and it shrinks the shame. This is a gross thing to imagine, but this is literally what I think of when I think of shame, because I lived in these New York City apartments in my early 20s, and we had all kinds of living creatures in these places that shouldn't have been there, right? My boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, had an apartment above a grocery store that looked during the day lovely and affordable. And it was a 2 bedroom, but the couple was never even there. So it felt like our own place. And then I stayed over one night and I went to the bathroom in the middle of the night and I flicked the light on and all these cockroaches started to scatter. You want to know what shame is? It's a whole horde of cockroaches.
Ugh.
When you turn the light on, when you speak the truth, when you say, I've been hiding this, I've been keeping this in,
Just runs away.
you kill off the negative energy. You will literally immediately feel better. You want a way out of your suffering? Tell the truth. You will immediately feel better. You will not have an immediate solution to your problem. There's work to be done,
Right. Right.
but you've got to tell the truth.
You feel much lighter, right? Just that's the first step you can.
Everybody has experience holding a secret in. I don't care if you're an addict or not. Everyone, it feels horrible to tell lies, especially to ourselves.
You give me the chills, yeah. That is so terrible to live like that. It just eats you alive. It really does. I have experience on that. I'll tell you about that later, but I certainly understand what you're talking about. And I'm so glad that you brought that up because I think saying it and being vulnerable, and vulnerability is something that we as a human, like that wasn't taught. And, like you said, we have to be strong. We have to do everything right. And vulnerability shows weakness. But in your
Mm.
case, it's really not.
Yeah, and that's just I mean, there's actually research on this now. You know, Brene Brown has written so many books on shame and vulnerability. There is so much research now that not only that vulnerability is the way of true strength, but that vulnerability is literally the path to a wholehearted life. A
Yeah.
life that when people get to the end of it, they feel has been filled with love, connection, and joy. There is research. So, this
Hmm.
whole cultural conditioning or what we learned in our upbringing, and that's really important. If you grew up with trauma, with abuse,
Mm.
where vulnerability created punishment in your house, whether it was emotional or physical,
Hmm.
it makes so much sense
Yep.
that you would not want to let the armor down around your heart. And we have to acknowledge that. It is not our fault, the things that have happened to us, but it is our fucking responsibility to heal
Mm.
if we want a happy life.
Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like your lovely husband, regardless of what you say and what you've been through, stay with you through good and bad and ugly.
Oh, yeah.
So how did that change? Like you work on yourself, you found yourself, and then everything changed, or was did?
Nah. Oh, I wish,
Because a lot of people listening right now, they're gonna be like, "Oh, how?" Like
I
she
know.
was with
I know
him through the whole.
I left you guys with a serious cliffhanger. It's actually such a wild part of my story, right? So it it would be so poetic if I told you guys, when I was separated and I was doing all that deep healing work, we ended up, and this is true, this part is true. My lease in that apartment was going up after 6 months. So I had been officially out of the house for like over a year. We were in therapy, but I was only seeing him a couple times a week and mostly just working on me. And it felt like we were healing, like we were doing better. So we both decided I'm going to move back home. But my intuition and I were buddies now. And she kind of whispered, you should keep this place, this apartment. It was a really cool apartment at the time. It was really affordable too. It was 9 blocks from the Pacific Ocean in Santa Monica. And I was in a mixed use building. So I was at the beginning of starting this practice, this movement based practice. And I said, can I convert this to a small fitness studio? So I held on to it. I moved back home. And within days of being home, it was so clear to me that I was different, but my husband was exactly the same. He was lying to me. He was not looking me in the eye. He was avoiding me sexually. He was constantly planning his next business trip. All the strange behaviors that drove me nuts that I kept defaulting to, well, this is my fault, were so painfully obvious. And I knew they had nothing to do with me. It was like I was wearing a brand new pair of glasses. Having that shame cleared, I could see things for what they actually were, not what they used to be before I hurt him or what I was fantasizing they would become when he finally forgave me. I could see it squarely in the eye. I looked at him and I said, I don't know what's going on with you, but I don't want to do this anymore. I don't deserve this. I'm done. And he dropped to his knees and he begged me to stay. Begged me to stay. And my intuition spoke up again. She said, you can stay or go. Doesn't matter. You're going to find out everything you need to know either way. So it's up to you. And I had just moved back in after sleeping on
Right.
couches, right? So I was like, oh God, well, at least for a little bit. I don't want to fucking leave. Yeah, I just practically, this is exhausting. So I moved back in and he's planning one more trip. And I had actually had a trip to go visit my dad in Brooklyn in the same weekend. He drops me at LAX, and I remember kind of catching him in a lie because he had said he'd be doing a very specific thing on a Saturday evening. And then when I checked in and texted him, he was doing something completely different. I was like, oh, that's interesting. You changed your plans. And then a whole, you know, whole excuse of why. I said, okay, cool. I'll see you, I'll see you when we get back. I get back on a Monday. He gets back on a Tuesday. He collapses on top of me and says, you're going to be the mother of my children one day. Like, just like he's so. And of course, the irony of this is that, in fact, I did become the mother of his children. But the very next day, I go into my now office, the place that used to be my apartment, working with a client. And I don't know why I take a moment and I see an email come in, and it's from somebody I don't know, named Elizabeth Cruz. And the opening of the email said, I know you told me to stay away, but you have to help me get rid of him. And she writes this long email about the extramarital affair that she had been having with my husband for years and years and years. And she sent email exchanges and hotel receipts and I love yous. And I almost had a panic attack with my client. Told him I had to cancel the session real quick. There was an emergency. I go home. He's not there. I say, get your fucking ass home, and I show him all the shit, and I do what you would expect like a
Right, right.
raging woman to do, right? I take all his shit, fucking, you fucking leave. I'm thinking about the time, the length of time that I was gaslit, that was the greatest betrayal of all, really, was that in my sobriety, as I'm trying to get reacquainted with who I really am and what I deserve, I'm literally being told by the person I trust and love the most that my reality is not
Real.
it's not real, and that I am the cheater and not him. And I don't know what to tell you, Sam. That ongoing level of betrayal was the most gut wrenching. The thing that, by the way, has taken the longest to come out from under. So anyway, he doesn't really respect the fact that I say, get the fuck out. He leaves for a little bit, but then starts to come around. And now he's, deep in regret and shame of his own. And he's memorializing our lives. And oh, I was just like, man, I'm such a good mover. I've moved so many times. Do I really need to be in this house right now with all these tainted memories? This is where I was when we were fighting all the time before I moved out. Who knows? Maybe this is where and it's a 3-bedroom house that I don't need. I don't want this fucking rent. Like, just Sam, do what you've figured out how to do. Move out, start over, clean slate, right? So I say, you keep this fucking house. I'm out. So I find an apartment in Brentwood, about 10 minutes from my Santa Monica place now. And I get I start filing my divorce papers. I'm getting everything kind of ready to go. And I start having sex with just everyone. I just go and liberate. And it was glorious. I mean, there was, think about it, right? We meet, we're young, we have this really sort of hot sex when we're in our 20s, and I start getting really deep in my addiction. So then I'm having a lot of really unruly sex, and that's part of what went sideways on the front end, is that I was so wild when I was using that I was cheating, and then I was dragging him into these crazy situations. Then I get sober, we get married, and he's pulling away from me, and we're having no sex. So now I'm like this animal that feels like she's been in captivity. I've been punished, right? For everything, that wild nature of mine that couldn't be tamed. And now I was like, bring it on, baby. Like, now I can be a sober adult, and no one's going to fucking tell me shit for shit, right? So about 7-8 months into that sex spree, of course, he starts doing like all the work I had begged him to do. All the work, all the therapy, all the 12-step meetings. You know, there's many 12-step programs. So if people don't know, there's Al-Anon, for example, which is people who love an addict, who are affected by the addict, who are trying to control the addict or maybe enabling them, and who are not really focusing on themselves. And then they become very angry. And there's a whole cascade of sort of dis-ease on the other side of the addiction spectrum. I had been begging him to go to Al-Anon for the whole time we were married when I saw how pissed he was at me, and he refused. And now he was in Al-Anon, right? So I was like, of course, of course. And my intuition again, you know, after that experience with my mother at 4, when I learned not to listen to my intuition, all the way to the moment at 30 in the marital crisis when she showed up again, I made a
Mm.
promise to myself that I was never, ever going to ignore her again. I would always hear her out. So she showed up and she goes, "Are you sure you're done?" I was furious. I mean, the other parts of me were like, "Are you fuck?" It's like your best friend group, right? That's like, "You're gonna fucking take him back." Like all the little parts of me were like, and also, by the way, the entire outside world, because remember, I come to California from New York and I was only sober in California. So all my sober friends did not know addict Samantha, reckless Samantha. And addicts forget. We forget. I'm not saying I deserve, this isn't a deserving issue. I never deserved to be gaslit and cheated on the way that I was, regardless of what I did.
No.
But this is anybody. We judge so easily and we forget what we've done. We forget all about compassion. And so all the people around me, including my inner parts, were like, "You're not going to fucking take him back, right? He's a piece of shit." And so as I'm kicking and screaming with my intuition, she said, "If you're done, be done. You have fought the good fight. I love and support you, no matter what you choose. But if you're not done, and if you think you could have a happy life with this man on the other side of this mess, you might need to stay." And since I had made a promise not to ignore my intuition, I had to sit with that. I had to sit
Mhm.
with that truth and at least give it some time to marinate. And I would just put myself into, 5 or 10-minute bouts of meditation. And every time, it wasn't a thought, it was an image that came to me. And it was me, maybe because I'm from New York City and I always grew up like, taking the subway into Manhattan. But I would be looking through a dark tunnel, and it seemed like a subway tunnel with seemingly no end in sight. And then there was a match lit at the end of the tunnel. And I did not know any other way to make of that other than
And
there is hope.
I was gonna say it.
Tiny as it may be, there is hope. And so I decided to see what it would mean to stay. And so we started very slowly after that first year dating each other again. I will say, if I had known that it would take 5, 6 years to really feel free from the level of resentment and betrayal that I experienced, I don't know if I would have stayed. I'm
Yeah.
glad nobody told me how long it would take, how hard it would be. It's a real testament to how much we love each other, how much we are constantly willing to work to meet each other on the other side of wherever we are spiritually and where we're blocked. The fact that I had enough spiritual insight to stand back from the pain of it and go, Well, Sam, let's ask some really tough questions. Do you think your husband is an addict, like a sex addict, who is just going to repeat the behavior? No. Okay. So you think it's a consequence of sort of the arc of your story of really untreated resentment, that it was a retaliation or he should have. Yes, I think it's that. Okay. So you were unfaithful and you were a liar and a cheater and all that when you were sick, when you didn't have tools. And now you're a sober woman with dignity and grace. Do you think that's true for him too? Like if he gets armed with tools, spiritual tools, ways to clear resentment when he feels angry at you, for example, that he too can be a grown man with dignity and grace, and that you too could, in that space, have a big, beautiful life. Yeah, I think maybe that I think that's possible. Oh, okay.
I was gonna say.
Buckle up, baby. Buckle up. And the level of, therapy, the level of sexually self-liberation that I've had to go through to not feel like a prisoner in the marriage, which I think many women, we suffer from sort of not enjoying our sex lives. And it's such a different experience for women, for most women, than it is for men in terms of what we need. And even when the intellectual process of forgiveness was well underway, and I didn't walk around and pass him in the house feeling like, fuck you, how could you have hurt me like this? Even when that was really dissolved. Sexually, oh God, getting to orgasm was torture. Because the second a single thought in my head of, oh, remember the time he said this about you, which was
Don't you
really,
hate that?
remember, oh, did he do this with her?
Yeah. Ugh.
Everything showed up in my body, right? So it was torture.
Torture. Yeah.
Just reaching orgasm was torture. And I remember about a year and a half, 2 years in, I called my therapist. She said, is there anything he could be doing to show you that he wants you, that he desires you, that he's in this completely, that you, and I really had to think about that, because if there was more, I was going to ask him to step up,
Yeah.
but there wasn't. And I thought, oh my God, that means the only place left to try before maybe this is just the end of our story. I don't know, is that I have to liberate myself from this prison. Because if I was the animal who finally got let out of captivity in that fucking spree I was on, when we got back together, I literally walked myself back into a cage, except nobody locked the door behind me. Like when I was with him and he was saying, I didn't cheat. You're the cheater. I was locked in a fucking cage when that happened, and he had the key. But now I walked back in and the door was open. And the only person that was going to let me out of that prison was me. How? Well, I said, from this day forward, I will never do anything sexually with this man that doesn't feel really good. If he starts kissing me or touching me in a way that starts getting me in my head, that sends the wheels spinning into the past, into the, I don't like this, and then I lose my voice and I don't say anything because I was the best. No. If I don't like it, I do whatever in that moment I feel like doing. I honor the call of my body and not my mind every single second when we are physically intimate with each other. And that is how I got myself out of that cage. And we have an amazing sex life.
You came home. You came to yourself. Like you said, it one way, come home.
That's right.
My
Hmm.
God.
Yeah.
It's so funny that when we tell the stories and people listening, and they're like, fuck, I do the same thing, you know? It just comes to you. And we don't realize it. We don't realize it. And this is why I bring amazing people like yourself to tell the story. And we go, and I don't. I'm like, you know what? Let's just, because people, like you said, they need to listen. When they listen and they're like, I feel this way,
Hmm.
you know, I remember what that sounds like, what that feels like, you know, how it is to and end up everything back on yourself. So
Yep.
it's amazing that what you have been through and how you overcome all of that. And you're helping so many people. And you're a mother. How's
Yeah.
that mother had changed your life?
I know. Isn't that wild? I did become the mother of his children. We have
Listen, it's a cute story in a way because regardless of what, you know, you both did what you did, but in the end of the day, you end up with him. He knows you now. He knows the other side of you. He knows this side of you. So he knows everything about you. And like you said, you're yourself now. You're like, this is me. That's it. Take it or leave
Yep.
it. And he took it.
Yeah.
And that is so romantic. Come on.
Hmm.
And that makes you fucking like, you know, like that's how women become like attractive to men, right? When they take us all and say, I picked you.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we have a son and daughter. My daughter is 6. Her name is Charlie, and my son is Jack. He's 9.5. And it's such a great question because i- in the space I'm in today, right? I want to speak on all these stages and change lives and reach millions of people, right? These are such lofty goals, so big. And I love that I have them. I love that my young childhood ambition of a mic in hand and being, in a big stadium with a bunch of lights is now repurposed with this beautiful intention. However, the greatest thing that I have ever done, that I will ever do, is be the cycle breaker in a long generation of
I
mental illness
love
and
that.
addiction. And my children will forever reap the benefits of having a sober mother. They will have my book. They will literally know how their mother got through her hardest things. They will have the 12-step blueprint for how to navigate uncertainty, fear, resentment, and loss. Nobody gave me that.
Yeah.
They will have the sound of my voice on a conversation like this.
Yeah.
This is legacy leaving stuff. And I'm not
Mm,
going to get it right. I make mistakes as a mother all the time, but it doesn't get better than this. And
no.
at the end of the day, if it all stopped right now, I've already done the hardest and the best thing by being this version of myself for my children.
God damn, you're a fucking winner.
Hmm.
You are. And we hear people say that, oh, is she or he born with a golden spoon in their mouth and this and that. Fuck yeah, you did.
Oh
Fuck yeah, you
boy. Yeah.
did. I'm not
Yeah.
ashamed to say that. I'm proudly say yes, I put the golden spoon for them, which you did. And that's what matters the fucking most.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, people don't realize that. And I'm sure they're gonna grow up and they're gonna adore you for this. They're gonna
Hmm.
love you so, my gosh, they're gonna love you for this.
Eventually. Hopefully all the way through, but if there's stormy periods, then
Well, that's just whatever, but I'm sure they will because how can you not? How can you not? We're human being. It's a circle, comes back.
mm,
It always does. You know that.
mm,
It always does. And you're the chosen one. You're the chosen one because you know what? I bring so many people, like I said, I love the stories because every time my jaw just drops. every time. And I could tell you my story is a whole other thing. But every time when I interview somebody, I hear the same people like going through the same thing, but different,
Mm,
different version of them. And I remember I had a woman, she's had a near death experience.
mm,
And she came here and she was telling me the story. And I'm like this. I couldn't fucking believe it. I'm like, oh my God. But one thing she said, when we die and when we get it reincarnated, you
mm,
go through vetting and they ask you, and you ask them to come back as a human. You ask God to come back as a human. And God vets you and says that I'm only going to let you go if you can handle everything that I'm going to give you. So if you hear, you know what that means? You fucking guarantee you're going to handle it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here.
mm. Yeah.
I wish you knew that when you started all of this, right?
I
Right?
think I think it was my soul's journey to have to learn it though.
But he knew. He knew you could have done it. You knew that you're gonna come out on the other side good. And he put you in this earth because he knew you were gonna make a change.
Mm,
He knew you are somebody that belong here, that has a job, that is good at his job.
mm.
And you did such an amazing job.
Thank you.
You really did.
Thank you.
And I think that's the greatest gift, right? Is in a spiritual journey. I'm sure you learned that when we feel that and like, wow, I did something good. And
Yeah.
I'm so honored to have you here, listening to your stories,
Mm,
seeing you, and I'm so proud of you.
thank you.
Like I said, it just shows all over, like the energy just comes out, just like a little angel, and you glow from inside out.
Hmm. Thank you. It's cool because I can really receive that now. Everything you said. Yeah.
You deserve it.
Yeah.
You do. I think everybody does, but it takes some people longer than others to get there, to accept it, to receive it. Because as you know, a lot of time we just the resistant of, no, because
Hmm.
you're still not clear here. So I can't believe that. But I'm sure that you're in this point to receiving it because it's true. It's fucking true.
Hmm.
Some people can bullshit, but you see that.
Hmm.
You see the bullshit, right?
Oh yeah, my bullshit meter's real high. Yeah, it's really cool because yeah, I've earned my stripes, I've earned my scars. I remember even thinking back to forget about my whole youth, but even early on in recovery, because people are really afraid of public speaking. And I'm like, put me on the biggest stage, coach, put me in, I'm ready, and I'm just like, get me up there. But there was a time early on in recovery, even having to share a little bit. If we were in a meeting where it was a round robin, you knew you could always
Yeah.
say, hi, I'm Samantha, I'm gonna pass. But if I knew I had to speak, the amount of self obsession and fear of what am I going to say? I'm going to have nothing to say. Blah, 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 to now being like, I want to share. It's coming from it's literally like the whole world tells us. In my case, it's sort of an extreme example, but for many of us, even just culturally, make your outsides beautiful, make your house beautiful, show that you've found a partner, maybe have a couple kids if you want, get the car and the job and the degree. But whatever's going on inside, don't worry. You could be empty in there. Just make sure, right? And it's like if if you could sort of unstitch my outsides, the inside of me is so sturdy now. So filled with love for myself, so unbelievably aware of my own worthiness that I can receive all of those things. I can get on a podcast or a stage and know that it is not about me. that I've lived through enough hard things that something I say is going to help one person. And that
Amen to
is
that.
enough. It's the feeling of doing this kind of work is, I wish someone had told me that. I was told to get your degree. Get your degree. No one can take it from you. And I understand there's practical things about the life we live, and our parents can only do their best. But Jesus Christ, if someone had said, you know what? If you want to be a wild success in your life, if you want to have all the things, all the outside things, the money, the boyfriend, the body, the financial stability, all you have to do is become a spiritual billionaire first. If someone had just said that and shown me the way of how to do that part of the work, man, that's the school of life right there.
That's it. That's it. I'm not going to take too much of your time, but before I let you go, what does inner power means to you?
Inner power is when you know in your bones that worthiness is your birthright.
Wow, love that. Love that. That is so true. Samantha, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for all your story and teaching us so much. I'm sure there's a lot of listeners out there listening and gonna
Mm,
relate and give them the courage to come out and do something about their life and live their purpose
mm,
proudly without being hurt or trapped in their own skin.
mm-hmm. Amen. And it's so easy to find me on Instagram or my website and book a discovery call. We kept saying, like, what do we do if we don't know? If we
Well,
don't
we
know
have
what
all the
to do?
information on your
Yeah,
show
it's like,
notes.
just
Yeah.
you guys can call me.
Yeah.
I don't know you, right? So there's no bias whatsoever, and you just
Now
heard
they do.
everything about me, right? Yeah, now you know my heart.
Yeah,
But
now you do.
there
But
there's a pathway literally from the moment you hear this and you're feeling stirred up by it. There's a direct call to action that you can take today that is for free.
that's it. That's it. This is a calling for people that if you're listening to this right now, this is a wake up call. This is what the universe telling you that it's time. And we have all your information. I will give you guys all the information for her. Please do reach out. She's amazing and she can definitely help you.
Thank you so much. This was awesome.